This is the 401k Fridays podcast, and I'm your host, Rick Unser. If you're a retirement plan fiduciary or administer your company's retirement plan, you've come to the right spot. Our format is pretty simple. In each episode, we select a timely and informative workplace retirement plan topic, we pick the brain of an expert guest, and provide you the hard-to-find perspective you need to make informed decisions that benefit your plan, your employees, and company. Now here we go with this week's episode. A few months ago, Vanguard, from seemingly out of nowhere, made an announcement about the future of their record-keeping business. To be honest, there was a lot of confusion and questions about their rationale, the details, and what the future holds for them. To address those and many more questions, I'm excited to have Dean Edwards, a principal and head of institutional strategy and market leadership with Vanguard, join me on the podcast. Our conversation has, well, as it should, a great beginning, middle, and end. You don't want to miss any of it. I know I learned a lot from Dean, and I hope you do as well. Coming up on the podcast, we have great episodes, starting with one about politics, elections, and 401k plans. In another one, we dive into some of the driving forces behind the M&A activity in the retirement ecosystem, and we're going to explore best practices on everyone's favorite topic, retirement plan fees, and much more as we look to close out the year that's been 2020. If for any reason you're not subscribed to the podcast, take care of that today by searching 401k Fridays on your favorite podcast app or by going to 401kfridays.com/subscribe. That's it. I hope you enjoy my conversation with Dean. Well, Dean, thanks for joining me today. A lot of fun and interesting things going on over there at Vanguard, so really can't wait to hear what you have to say. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, Rick, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you this afternoon.
So I guess let's just jump into it. True or false, Vanguard sold their record-keeping business?
Well, thanks for the question, and it's a nice opportunity to be able to set the record straight. The answer is absolutely false. We have not sold our record-keeping business. In fact, this partnership that we've announced with Infosys really is an investment in our record-keeping business. But to be extremely clear, Vanguard is 100% committed to the DC record-keeping business now and well into the future. And that's, in fact, driving a lot of the reasons why we decided to partner with Infosys to reimagine, as we've said, the record-keeping industry at large and our business here at Vanguard.
So obviously there had to be some very good decisions behind venturing off onto this new partnership. As you think about some of those, maybe what led to this even becoming an idea in your mind, how did that get started? What were you hoping to accomplish? It'd be great to get some of that background.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think, Rick, you know this about us. Vanguard is a client-owned firm. So if you invest with Vanguard, you effectively own a portion of Vanguard. We're a mutual. We're the only mutual asset management company in the industry. And as a result of that mutual ownership, we are a highly mission-oriented organization. And one of the things that is extremely important to us is in the delivery of that mission, being able to help the 5 million participants that we serve today on our record-keeping platform prepare for and achieve what their version of retirement success looks like. And as we've stepped back and we've looked at, what are the needs and expectations of both participants and plan sponsors in the years and decades ahead, it's become clear to us that expectations are increasing. One of the reasons for that increase in expectation is, it's no longer just about retirement, but in fact, participants and plan sponsors face lots of decisions related to the trade-off between benefits and a complexity in personal finance that didn't exist decades ago when the defined benefit plan ruled the day. And that was the primary way that the workforce in America was saving for retirement. Now we have 401k as the dominant way that savings are being accumulated. There's the advent of the high deductible health plan and the HSA. and the interplay and intersection between those types of accounts alongside all of the other day-to-day personal financial decisions that working families are facing. And what we recognize is that in order to continue to be able to serve those participants and those expectations well, we have to have a platform that is going to be nimble and flexible and that is going to be able to grow with those changing needs and expectations. And at the heart of what we're doing, that's what this is about. It's about being able to create a record-keeping platform that is built for the digital technologies of tomorrow. And those digital technologies are being built in the cloud. So Vanguard wants to be able to do two things. We want to be able to take advantage of capabilities that we may not bring to market, but that others are bringing to market day by day, week by week. And then also the cloud providers have an impressive set of services available to their clients that we also see an opportunity to leverage as we think about what it means to be a record keeper and what it means to help participants with those financial decisions that they face, whether it's near term or longer term. And so at the end of the day, that's what this is about. And I would say that it's not just Vanguard that faces this decision of whether or not to invest in a platform of the future. I think the entire industry is at a crossroads at the moment. You know, the record keeping platforms that we are all operating on are mainframe based. They are, created decades ago, and they just can't very easily take advantage of these new digital technologies that are being created. And there's been a lot of work at Vanguard and others to augment and adapt those platforms. You've probably heard yourself that some providers have, started to move down a path of a strategy that's going to enable their platform to work in a cloud environment. But we're the first that's going to be building a fully cloud native platform. And there's a distinct difference. And if you want, we can talk about what those differences are and why building cloud native is something that we believe is going to benefit our clients and ultimately their participants.
Yeah, and I definitely want to jump into that. Anyone listening to this podcast is someone who is very interested in 401k plans, so I don't think we're going to bore them to tears with some of those conversations. I guess maybe one foundational question, and I might screw this up, so just bear with me, but I guess when you're thinking about a big business decision, and you're thinking about maybe doing something new or getting into a new market, whatever the case is, you can build it, you can buy it, you can rent it. I think I got that right. If I didn't, please clarify. But with what it sounds like you're doing with Infosys, it sounds like you decided, well, hey, we don't necessarily want to build this internally. We don't want to necessarily buy it, so we're gonna lease it, rent it, partner with it. Am I kind of thinking about that right, or would you put a different framework on that in terms of how this came about?
You are thinking about it right. I would just clarify that we're gonna both build it and own it, and so I'll explain what I mean by that. So this partnership between Vanguard and Infosys, let's be really clear. We are the record keeper of contract. That does not change. So we continue to provide all of the services to our clients, all of the contracts that they have in place with us today, all of the service level agreements, all of the contractual protections, those all remain in force. And we simply just subcontract parts of the relationship to Infosys. What that means from a technology standpoint is that Infosys is going to be, along with Vanguard and a number of our employees that are going to be transitioning to Infosys as we've communicated, they're going to be building this new platform for our sole and exclusive use. So Vanguard owns it. It will only ever be used to record keep the plans of Vanguard clients and to serve those participants in those plans. So we remain the owner of all of the systems, all of the IP associated with this new platform of the future. But yes, I mean, Infosys is going to be working alongside us and building it for us. And there's a reason we took this approach. We could have built this on our own. And in fact, we went down that path and we took a look at what that would mean. But we also are humble enough to appreciate, what we're really good at and also where you can partner to augment your capability and bring other best-in-class providers into the mix to really help you accelerate and achieve your success. And so as you think about the partnership between Vanguard and Infosys, Vanguard brings investment management expertise. We bring deep understanding of 401k plan design and how those plan designs can affect and help participants on that path toward retirement success. And then we've also become expert in understanding participant behavior. For years, we've been using behavioral finance and personalization, and increasingly now even artificial intelligence and machine learning to personalize experiences and drive outcomes to the tune of what we see as being 5 times more effective than others in the record-keeping industry. What Infosys brings to the relationship are 3 things. The first is human-centered design and their expertise there. As we think about reimagining the digital experience for participants and the digital experience for clients, it's so important that you put the participant and the client in the center of that decision-making process. And Infosys has done this time and time again in a number of different industries. So we're excited to be able to partner with them and learn from that expertise. They also bring significant digital innovation. We're going to be, implementing a new generation of our personalization approach, and Infosys is going to help us in doing that, whereby we can, not now, not in a year from now, but in the not too distant future, think of an experience where you could have any infinite number of combinations of web architecture, language, tone, imagery. All of that could be driven by a machine learning model that would make it more likely, given the data and information that you know about someone, that you can serve the needs of that participant in a very effective and efficient way. And they've done and brought this digital innovation to market in other relationships. And so that's the second area that we're very excited about partnering with them on. And third, and probably most important, is their technical execution. They are a global technology leader. They have over 250,000 employees across the globe. They are in the business of redesigning platforms. And so when you asked me, you could do this on your own, you could buy something, or you could rent effectively. We decided that partnering with Infosys to have them build this on our behalf made a lot of sense, because they've just proven time and time again that they're able to execute these large and complex platform transformations with excellence.
As you go through that, which is all great info and super helpful, just to kind of get an understanding of how this decision came about, when you talk about things like machine learning and integrating a lot of very complex platforms, what I'm thinking in my head is, wow, you've got a very progressive vision for where retirement plans are headed going forward versus maybe where they are today, or even will be in 6 months or 12 months. So when you think about that, when you think about the digital innovation piece of it, I'd be curious, what does that look like in application? 3 years from now, 5 years from now, what do you envision people maybe being able to do within the architecture of their 401k plan if some of what you're thinking about becomes reality?
We've been hard at work creating a solution there that is powered by a new set of services called Advice from Vanguard. But it's really a continuum of services, from the most basic level of guidance that you want to provide someone as it relates to simple decisions, up through very complex financial planning scenarios for higher net worth individuals, as sort of a range on the continuum. But here's a couple of practical examples for how this digital innovation is going to evolve the record-keeping industry. One I would point to is being able to better leverage the data that we have about individuals to orient the experience for them. So let's say we have 2 different participants, and one we know is a high income, high salaried, high saver, and they don't engage with our systems often, but they probably check their 401k account a few times a year. And from that past experience, we know that that's typically what they intend to do. They want to get a sense for their balance. They want to get a sense for how they're tracking relative to their retirement goal. They may want to take a look at our projections relative to their readiness for retirement, how much income we believe they'll need versus how much they're going to have. And maybe there's a savings recommendation that we're going to have for them in the mix. We can make that front and center in the experience the minute they log on. In fact, before they even log on, we can deploy a personalized communication to the email address that they've sent us or a text message to the phone number that they've provided just to prompt them and remind them that it's been a little while. Maybe they want to check in. And when they do that, that's the entirety of the focus of the site. Now, there's other things that may, that will exist. They might want to explore other potential avenues, change an investment. Maybe they have an interest in learning a little bit more about a health savings account, as an example, because they see that as a way that they could potentially save more. But it's about how do you focus on the primary reason why you believe they are coming into that digital experience, framing the experience so that that is the center of what they see. And then also, as I mentioned, you get an understanding for the kind of language that engages them, potentially even the type of imagery that is going to be appealing to them. And you can build the site in that kind of way. The second person is a different profile. They may not be as high of income. Maybe they make, call it $30,000, $40,000 a year. We see that they don't ever engage with the site. Their savings rate is either low or maybe they just recently dropped that savings rate to something lower. And all indications to us are that they're likely coming to transact. And so while we in the industry do everything that we can to try to avoid participants from taking money out of the system, inevitably what we know is that if they've made that decision, they've made it long before they've come to a digital experience and they're coming to just transact. And so let's orient the experience in a way that makes it easy for them. It allows them to get access to the funds that they need in a very quick way. But then we can also provide some contextual guidance as they go through that helps them appreciate the implications of the decision that they're making. So don't get in their way, but maybe throw up a few yield signs, if you will, just so that they have an appreciation for the decision that they're making and how it's going to impact their retirement. Maybe we do all that and they still can't quite get done what they need to do. We're going to create an omni-channel experience for them. And so if they have to drop out of the digital experience and they have to cross over into the contact center, we're going to take all of that data of that interaction that they just had with us. And after our associates authenticate them, we're then going to use a predictive model to tell the associate exactly why we believe that participant is calling. So rather than having to ask a few open-ended questions to get at the reason why the person's on the phone, we can immediately jump into helping them with the problem that they have and creating a solution for them. And then I'll carry it all the way through. So what we want to do is after the fact, and there's probably a waiting period, maybe it's 6 months, maybe it's a year, but we don't want to lose sight of the fact that that person was at some point saving more. They had to drop that savings probably for a reason, and then maybe they took that loan or potentially hardship withdrawal. Doesn't mean they're going to be in that set of circumstances forever. Oftentimes, the inertia kicks in, and they may forget that they need to come back and ratchet back their savings. And so we're going to prompt them at that right time to come back in and to consider saving more. Again, we might do it through that outbound email that I mentioned. The other thing that we're really excited about, Rick, is this concept of an open API architecture that we're creating. And what I mean by that is imagine where a plan sponsor has this desire to, as they're navigating their employee base through open enrollment, and they might be using Workday, that they'd want to insert the opportunity for someone to save more in their 401k, or considering rebalancing their investment portfolio if we see that portfolio may not be balanced relative to their age and time horizon toward retirement. This open API system that we're creating allows us to work with plan sponsors in that way. We can intercept and interject those experiences into Workday, or even if they have an intranet site, we can do that. And this idea that participants will only ever come to Vanguard or anyone else's record-keeping website or mobile app is, I think, thinking of the past. What we need to do is position ourselves to be able to put information and experiences into a multitude of ecosystems and effectively find the participant where they are, where the friction is going to be the least. And hopefully, again, with that interjection, you're able to get them to pay attention more effectively and lead to that outcome that we all believe is in the best interest of that individual to take or to achieve.
And I can tell you that type of integration would certainly be music to the ears of many employers out there who I think just there's certainly some frustration with, I think, the way that 401ks currently work today, where it's very hard to get data. I mean, just from a payroll provider to a record keeper and vice versa, and just 180 feeds, 360 feeds, and all these other things that need to be set up and specially programmed. And I mean, that's just payroll, but then forget about changes to deferral percentages, investment elections, all the stuff you talked about. If there's a way to make that more native into other communications or programs that people are maybe interacting with more frequently, I'm with you. I think that could be a huge benefit, not only to employers who are trying to streamline and take advantage of the what's often limited level of engagement that people have with benefits and other programs, and really maximize the impact as they are doing those types of communications. So yeah, kudos. Would love to see how that evolves and see where that goes, because I think that could certainly make a big difference in a lot of people's lives. And I guess thinking back to maybe this decision around Infosys, I can't imagine they were the only ones who were interested or the only ones that you spoke to. Obviously, you talked about some really great qualities that they brought to the table. Was there anything else that helped you land on them as your partner to build this out versus others that maybe you thought of or were considering?
Yeah, there's a few other things that I would point to. Something that's incredibly important to us at Vanguard is our crew. So we call ourselves crew, those of us that are employed at Vanguard. And we knew that as we were heading on this journey, that it was likely we were going to have some of our family join a new organization. And there's a reason for that. And I just want to spend a moment and talk about this, because it is a distinction between what we're doing and what I've seen some others do as they partnered with companies like Infosys or some of the other big global tech players. We've spent a few years thinking about this future and vetting a number of different providers. Myself and my colleagues have traveled across the globe. I have seen the operations of many of Infosys's competitors and other record keepers that they work with. But there's a distinct difference in what we're doing versus what I think is typically done with some of these large tech players. What you traditionally see is a lot of the solutions are simply about labor arbitrage. How do you take the existing work and just move it offshore into a lower cost operating model? But there's no change to the work itself. It looks exactly the same. So all of the risk inherent with all of that manual work still exists. One of the things that was really clear to us when we started to engage in conversation with Infosys was they had a broader vision, and they shared our broader vision. They know that this is not just about the underlying record-keeping platform itself, but it's also about the surrounding ecosystem. And we have the opportunity, as we change the platform, to also change the way we think about the processes that surround that platform. We can digitize, we can reduce touch points, we can effectively eliminate manual work. And in doing that, not only do you become more efficient, but you reduce a lot of risk. And I think, Rick, you and I and a lot of the people listening to this podcast today would agree, record keeping is complex, 401ks are complex, there's a lot of risk in the system. So we can create a future where we can take out a lot of that risk. Why not do that? And, I have a record keeping background. I've been in this business for, call it 14 of my nearly 17 years at Vanguard. And one of the things that distinguished Infosys from the others is their technology as it relates to understanding operations as well. So as an example, I was on their campus in Bangalore, and they were walking me through how they can take all of the data points that they are gleaning from a process and fully digitize the entire process. So rather than trying to guess what's happening in a process and using whiteboarding and workflow mapping and those things, they're using software to determine at every point in a process, how did that transaction flow? How long did it take? What role was touching it? What are the comments associated with what was happening? And they can digitize all of that. And then what's even really interesting is they can take that and they can deploy robotic process automation through other software that they've created in a very agile way. And so they effectively create all these little micro robots. And as they're seeing the data come back through the operational workflows, they come up with new ideas for new micro robots using machine learning models. It's a level of technological sophistication that, I don't think this industry has ever seen before. And when you partner with someone that has that broader vision, I do think that's going to create an unlock for plan sponsors and participants relative to what we've seen in other partnerships in this industry. The other difference is just the approach to the platform. They from day one were all in on the idea of starting with Vanguard's platform. And it's important that we start with our platform because what that means is our clients will not have to experience any unwanted or negative changes. They're going to experience a lot of positive changes, but things like changing the way that they send us data or the output of our systems and what they're expecting for their participants, those things are going to remain unchanged. It was a non-negotiable for us. We didn't want to have to go back to plan sponsors and say, you've got to work with the IT groups and, come up with a budget and be on this timeline because we're going to have to ask you to make changes. That's not going to be happening. The other thing that Infosys is doing is they're effectively starting from the outside in and working effectively service by service in migrating the legacy platform to the cloud native environment that it's going to be operating in. And as a result of that, you get a couple of things. One, you can vastly eliminate risk. So many people probably think about record keeping consolidation that has happened. There's been lots of record keepers that have been bought and sold in this industry. And with that traditionally comes conversions because you're moving from one platform to another. The difference here is we're taking our platform and we're migrating it over a period of time. And so there's no conversion that's going to be necessary for our clients. There's not going to be outages that they or their participants experience. But we also are able to risk control this, and we can run things in parallel for a period of time so that we can see that the output of the new system and the new code is delivering what we would expect relative to what the current platform is able to accomplish. So that's another big distinction. And again, one of the reasons why we selected Infosys was they've shown us that they've done this before and they can do this in record keeping despite not having worked in the record keeping industry previously.
And I really appreciate you sharing that background because I think the average, maybe industry person, certainly at the end user level, at the plan sponsor level, I think we've all kind of heard various iterations of what's happening, why you did it. It's kind of why I started where I started at the beginning of the podcast was, with that true or false question that you sold your retirement business, because I think a lot, because of what you've talked about today and how different that is, I think a lot of people are kind of struggling to get their arms around what actually happened, because I would agree with you. I mean, usually what we've seen is people are either selling or buying a record keeping business. They're not talking about what, again, I'm hearing you say, which is essentially completely through a unique partnership, reinvent the way that you're going to be delivering record-keeping services.
Absolutely. Thank you for recognizing that, Rick. The other thing that I want to call out about Infosys and what makes them different is that they're committed to growth in the U.S. And I started this by saying we care a lot about our employees, our crew. We wanted to make sure that as we faced the difficult decision of 1,300 of Vanguard's crew having to become a part of the Infosys family, that there was going to be a long-term career for them. And if you look at Infosys' history, they have roughly 40,000 employees in the United States now. and they have a track record of commitment to the local areas where they are investing around the country. They commit to net new jobs in the areas that they invest. And so they've done that in Charlotte, they've done that in Texas, they've done that in Indiana and in North Carolina. And they have those same commitments here in the southeastern Pennsylvania area as well. They're working through exactly what that's going to be. But that really gave us a sense of comfort that we knew that our crew were going to continue to be a part of our record keeping business, but then also as their aspirations took them in different directions, they were going to have the support of a growing, thriving global company with a very substantial U.S. presence.
No, thanks for sharing. And I definitely want to, as we, I guess, kind of pivot to maybe what some of the reactions been. That's probably a good place to start, actually, because I would imagine this announcement and this partnership with Infosys, I think probably came as a surprise to a lot of people. And I think, again, this idea that, hey, you today you are a Vanguard employee. At some point in time, you're going to become an Infosys employee. What was that reaction like? How did your teammates digest that or embrace that? And did that maybe go as you expected, or were there some things that are coming up that you're kind of working through as you let's call it remodel the airplane while it's still flying?
Sure, the reaction was mixed, and that was expected. With anything like this, you're going to see a range of reaction and a range of emotion, from excitement to people that are confused, uncertain, and frustrated. But what you see over time is that, and what we've seen is that as people begin to appreciate what Infosys brings, their commitment to growth in the U.S., their track record of growth in the U.S., their commitment to learning. They have an incredible learning platform, both digital and when we can get back to the days of getting on airplanes safely and feeling comfortable and, larger group settings. They've got an amazing learning facility in Indianapolis. So all of that coupled with just the opportunity to do what so many of us have wanted to do for such a long time, which is reinvent this business on behalf of the clients that we serve, that's when people really start to get excited. They start to see the capability that Infosys brings and the technological prowess that we've had an opportunity to talk about on this podcast today. And when they get exposure to that, they see what that means for their ability to continue to do their job with excellence and to meet the needs of their clients and the participants that we serve. We've had similar questions from clients. They often cite, as we have, we use NPS, just like I probably know many of our fellow record keepers do. When we get NPS scores back, it's often the case that one of the highest scores is for the team, the Vanguard team, and the team that serves our clients directly is, in often cases, beloved by that client. And they just wanted to make sure that the crew that were going to be going to Infosys were taken care of, and that they were going to still be a part of the relationship. And that is the case. We're not expecting that anyone that works with a client today will not be working with a client come October 12th when the Vanguard crew going become Infosys employees. And Infosys has that commitment as well. They recognize how important clients are in this equation, and the service team that client has gotten used to is incredibly important to them. Now, that said, again, we're going to look to reimagine this business. So there will be hopefully a time in the future where the reliance on certain roles doesn't look exactly the way that it does today. And so that's going to mean that the roles and responsibilities of the team on the ground will hopefully change for the better, both on the client side as well as on the Vanguard Infosys side.
And that's a really interesting point there. To the extent you can, how might that client service model look a little different? I mean, we're already seeing some changes, I feel like, in the way that record keepers are approaching service and things like that. So I guess, what does that continuum look like as you get into, year 1, year 3, year 5 of this kind of reimagined environment that you're going to be providing record keeping services in?
Yeah, the first thing I would point to, Rick, is that the service that clients should expect from Vanguard will continue to become far more digital. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to take people out of the process where those people add differentiated value, right? We still absolutely believe that there will be relationship management teams and teams that focus on working with our clients' day-to-day administrative contacts in running the plan. Hopefully, though, the way that those interactions happen start to potentially shift over time. And so you could see, right, digital platforms being the primary means through which information is being communicated. Simple, easy, efficient, effective. There's a lot of that now, but we think that the opportunity is truly endless for how much you can digitize. And what that allows us to do is it makes things that much more simple for our plan sponsors. So that's one area. The other area we've seen a big shift is around just this notion of communication and education to participants. We've pivoted from that long ago. This idea that you'd sit in a room and you'd talk about the communication calendar that you're going to deploy over the next 12 months, and you have a consultant that's primarily focused on that. We've taken that up a level and we've digitized the vast majority of those interactions. I talked about that personalization infrastructure at the start of our discussion today. That's just going to continue. And so we see that role on the team really morphing to be more of an experienced consultant, helping our clients understand the value of AI and machine learning and how that's helping us truly not only revolutionize the way we think about engaging participants, but also what are insights that we can provide back to them regarding their plan that we may not be in the position to do today. We call it digital nudging. And one of the expectations that we have is, I mentioned, we're going to be rebuilding, reimagining the entire both participant experience and client experience. We digitally nudge today in the participant experience. We're going to start digitally nudging in the client experience. Again, providing that deep level of insight that's going to hopefully pique someone's interest on the plan sponsor side and prompt a discussion with us around some positive action that they could take relative to their plan design that puts their employees on a better path toward retirement success.
Well, that's a fantastic transition because that's exactly where I wanted to head, was the plan sponsor side of things. What reaction have you gotten so far? What have been some of the more interesting questions or comments that have come in from plan sponsors? Because I think anytime an employer hears, hey, there's a big change coming at our record keeper, that I think immediately is going to invoke some level of anxiety of, oh my gosh, whether it's legal stuff around contracts, which I know we've talked a little bit about, or systems or payroll integrations or whatever. I think there's instantly that just what's changing, what do I need to know, what are we going to have to do differently, and how is this going to impact other areas of our life? So I'm just curious in terms of how that all was received by the market and kind of what has flowed back up to you in terms of comments, questions, concerns, etc.
Sure, I'll give you my perspective, Rick, and then I'm curious to hear your perspective on what you're hearing in the market relative to the news. So I'll take it in two parts. From a consultant standpoint, it's primarily been seeking to understand. As we've gone through conversations, there's been a big focus on really what's not changing. So the idea that Vanguard remains a record keeper, the idea that all of the contracts that we have with clients today will not change, all of the protections that they have negotiated, all of the service levels that have been negotiated, that tends to be, after you talk about the why, right? The strategic, imperative behind why we made this choice, and you start to get into the details, that's where it tends to go first. And once we're, able to commit that we're not changing the contracts, they're not, contracting directly with Infosys, service levels remain the same, and in fact improve over time, and all of the additional protections still are in force. That immediately, I think, starts to ease any level of anxiety that may be there. The next question that we get is around information security. That's a popular topic, and we're quick to just communicate that all of the practices that Vanguard has in place today with respect to information security are going to remain in effect with the Infosys relationship. So a couple of examples, we've been using Amazon Web Services, who's our cloud provider, for a number of years now. And before we put any data or code into that cloud environment, our team of security experts here worked with Amazon to really build out the cloud with the appropriate controls and protections that are expected in financial services. I think it was to the tune of more than 200 changes that Amazon made before we entered into that cloud environment. All of those changes are being copied as we bring online the Infosys instance of Amazon Web Services. So that helps people get more comfortable. There's a question around data and where does it reside? And that question is very easy to answer. All of the data is going to continue to reside in the U.S. in data centers onshore in the continental United States. And then finally, we cover the fact that Vanguard Security Operations Center is going to continue to monitor the systems and the data flow as a result of what we're doing here in this partnership with Infosys. All at the same time, training Infosys in some of the practices that we've been using and deploying as it relates to security and financial services. So those are the three main areas that we cover as it relates to data and security. And again, clients and consultants both very appreciative to hear that such care has been taken as it relates to that area of focus. There's a question about fees. They hear us talking about the big investment that we're making in the platform, that we're reimagining both the participant and the client experience. And they ask, gosh, are my fees going to increase as a result of this investment? And again, the answer there is no. We're not expecting fees to increase at all as a result of this partnership. So that's another thing that quickly, I think, puts clients at ease. And then we get around to the team. They learn that the team's not changing. And so when you take that all into account, what starts as a fairly neutral and sometimes even positive perception of what we're doing quickly moves to a resounding positive perception of what we intend to do. And then probably no surprise to you, Rick, a lot of our clients partner with Infosys or companies like Infosys in the delivery of their own services, whether it be HR-related services or oftentimes in other parts of their business. So, it's fairly common that we have a client saying, oh yeah, I work with Infosys, or I work with, another of their competitors, and, come accustomed to the type of service and the excellence in service that they can provide. And that just kind of rounds out the conversations. And, clients ask us to just keep them updated, but they're generally very, very interested in learning more, continuing to stay apprised of the progress we're making on the roadmap that we've laid out. But all in all, happy that we've taken a step back and we've thought about them and their employees and their participants and how we can position ourselves to continue to serve them for decades to come. They love hearing that. They love hearing that we're willing to invest so heavily in this business and in their employees' financial security and retirement security.
And since you mentioned that a second ago, obviously in the world of 401ks, you kind of have two or, well, I guess maybe three masters, depending upon how you want to think about it. The plan sponsor, which I think you just shared some great input on, but then there's also the end users, the participants that you're engaging with, or that are looking to their record keeper as kind of the custodian. And I'm using that more in the familiar term, the custodian of their retirement assets and the money that they're going to be using to live off of when they exit the workforce. So from a participant level, I'd be curious. I mean, overall, you don't tend to get a ton of feedback directly from participants. I mean, most 401k plan sponsors we don't really hear too much. But I'd be curious, with the magnitude of this change and the announcement here, have you had any feedback from participants that sort of bubbled up to your level? And if so, what's that been?
We haven't. It's been really quiet on the participant front. We're not hearing through phone conversations or email correspondence, really any questions relative to the partnership. We're going to track service closely. As we move through this transition, what's most important to us is that service levels, as I mentioned, remain at the high level they are today and improve over time. And I think if we do that, right, so long as we continue to maintain those service levels, we continue to invest in the experience, we, bring more and more clients to the decision around adopting advice from Vanguard, and that then allows their participant base to, have access to a broader range of services that helps them with not just retirement, but the multiple competing goals that they may find themselves facing day in and day out. I think as long as we accomplish those things, participants are going to be satisfied. But we're going to track it closely. One of the things that we're going to be looking at is participant sentiment, and we want to be able to report to our plan sponsors on the sentiment of their population, and that crosses channels. So whether it's them interacting with us digitally or through a chatbot or through the contact center, we want to be able to get a sense for how they're feeling as they engage with Vanguard as a record keeper. Because at the end of the day, that matters. It has an impact on their impression of their employer. And we know that. That's not lost on us. And so we take that responsibility very seriously. We view ourselves as an extension of the plan sponsors that hire us to work on their behalf. And so we know that the work that we do is a direct reflection on them and their benefits offices.
No, well said, and I think a lot of employers would appreciate just the acknowledgement there, because I think that is very accurate in terms of the way that people do look at that. So let me pivot you here just to a couple kind of random questions. I mean, you've shared a ton of great information, and I guess one thought that comes to mind immediately is anytime you make a big announcement like this, that there's always confusion, which I know we've addressed a lot of today. And sometimes, unfortunately, in that confusion, that can impact or put current client relationships, at risk that maybe weren't at risk prior to an announcement of that magnitude. And also thinking about trying to attract and retain new clients where maybe people were, whether it be, consultants that you were partnering with or people that you're working directly with. It's like, okay, well, I kind of knew what I signed up for with this Vanguard, but I don't know what I'm getting with this new version of Vanguard. I mean, what are your thoughts there? I mean, is that a concern? Is that something that you guys all thought through or talked about as it related to making this kind of move in this bold new direction, or all that stuff will kind of figure itself out?
Oh, sure. We thought about it. I mean, I'd be lying if I told you we didn't, or if we didn't, think through different potential scenarios and likely outcomes. What I will say is that we've been pleasantly surprised. We've already had, a number of large relationships that were in RFP prior to the announcement and had not made their decision when we announced the partnership, and have since decided to remain with Vanguard. And every one of them has pointed to the partnership and the investment in the business as yet another reason why they want to continue to be partnered with Vanguard from a record-keeping standpoint. So that's been really just helpful for us to hear, that our clients appreciate why we're doing what we're doing. And they see the care that we've taken as we've thought through this plan, as we've structured the roadmap, as we've put controls in place to make sure that we continue to maintain and improve upon the service levels that we've been able to deliver to them. At the end of the day, that's what matters most to them. And so from the clients we've had the opportunity to talk about the partnership with directly, and it's been many, and even as I mentioned, those that were for just normal due diligence purposes, looking at the market, because that's what plan sponsors should be doing on occasion, they've reaffirmed their decision to stay with Vanguard. We've got prospects that are in the process of converting to Vanguard. We have not had a single prospect that's moving to become a Vanguard client. that has said that they want to stop the conversion because of this partnership. As you'd expect, they wanted to hear more. They have, and all of the conversions that we've have on the schedule are going to continue. I think we're still early days as it relates to additional new business. My sense is that the consulting community understands what we're doing. They understand why we're doing what we're doing. And, I think it's going to be very situational in terms of whether or not there might be a case where they tell a client, maybe you should wait. But from what I've been hearing, the large majority of the market has said, by and large, as we think about all of the facets of what Vanguard and Infosys intend to do, this is very positive for the industry. This is very positive for plan sponsors, and this is very positive for participants.
Yeah, and I will just echo a comment I made before that I think this has been hugely helpful, and I think you've shared a ton of great info. And I will say one narrative that has been out in the marketplace over the years, and I think this is something where some of the larger record keepers that are also in the business of sponsoring investment products, I think they get kind of painted with this brush that, well, they're really in the record keeping business to sell their investment products or position their investment products or have a better distribution channel to position their investment products. And I think, well, first off, I would love to get you to respond to that, because I think a lot of what we've talked about today would make me say, well, okay, maybe I see why you would think that, but there's a lot more to it than just selling quote unquote investments to plans and participants.
Yeah, I would agree. At the end of the day, and I'll take us back to the beginning of our conversation, I mentioned we're a mutually owned asset manager. We're owned by our clients, and we serve 5 million participants today and growing, by the week. Our objective is to help them achieve retirement success. And increasingly, we recognize that in order to achieve retirement success, we actually have to help them become better savers over time. Does investing in a Vanguard, low-cost, high-performing mutual fund help them accomplish that goal? Absolutely. Are we open architecture? Yes, we are. We're going to compete. We're competing for record keeping. We're competing for investment management mandates. And, absolutely. The data proves out that the lower the costs, the higher likelihood for success over time, because we return more by way of returns to participants. That's just part of our model. The other part of our model is helping people with complex decisions that they face financially. And we've invested heavily in the record keeping business. So as a part of paying the record keeping fee, whether that's the participant paying it or the plan sponsor paying it, we're providing them with a lot of guidance as it relates to when they can retire, the age, the income that they'll be able to spend, and increasingly zooming out beyond the retirement plan. Helping them understand the value of an emergency savings account, helping them understand the value of paying down high interest debt, helping them appreciate that a health savings account could become a retirement vehicle for them if they're able to pay current medical expenses out of current cash flow. So we've done all that. We've made all of those investments, and yes, we also have come to market with a suite of advice services from Vanguard. Again, we know that investors at large often want help, and our philosophy is how can we provide advice that's accessible, so to the entire participant base that we serve, and accessible meaning at a very low cost. Is it holistic? Ours is. It doesn't just talk about retirement. It actually spans any financial goal and need that a participant may have. And is it personalized, right? Because the value of these services, whether it's a target retirement fund or an advice service, if you're not getting information from a participant that helps you personalize that investment portfolio and those trade-off decisions that one has to face, you're not truly getting the value for those services. So at the end of the day, all of this comes together in the idea that we can help create better savers over time. And we play the long game here. And we know that by creating better savers, that ultimately leads to people that are going to be more prepared for retirement. And yes, part of that is more, investments in the Vanguard funds, but that's an outcome. That's not the reason why we do what we do. And I would, ask any plan sponsor to make sure that you're asking your record keeper about why they're in the business. We see conflicts of interest in a lot of places. One of the hallmarks of the advice program that we designed was that we were going to have a consistent fee and a consistent set of services across the entirety of accounts that we can serve. Whether you're in a Vanguard 401k, IRA, brokerage account, it doesn't matter. Vanguard Digital Advisor is going to serve you at 15 basis points, and Vanguard Personal Advisor Services is going to serve you at 30 basis points. We're not creating these incentives to roll participants out of the 401k and undo all of the amazing work that the plan sponsors and others on the podcast listening have done to make their retirement plans hospitable to their retirees, to put low-cost, high-performing funds into the investment lineup. We believe that those practices that exist to do that, should be questioned. And you've got to understand what are the motivations and how have these service models been built to create that incentive to undo some of that work that we've done as an industry on behalf of participants.
Yeah, very well said there. And I think that kind of hits on one of the other points that has been kind of going around in the industry, which is owning the participant or kind of owning that participant conversation. And I think you hit on a lot of the moving parts there, the delivery of advice and some of the things that you're doing on that end. I guess, does this partnership with Infosys help you in that whole conversation, whether it's from a business standpoint of kind of owning that participant interaction, or just from a more holistic planning support? Is there anything we haven't talked about that this partnership of Infosys kind of helps you do on that end?
Yeah, so we continue to own the participant. We own all of the data associated with that relationship, and so it doesn't really disintermediate us in any way. But where it helps is, Infosys has a lot of expertise in creating personalized experiences. They've got some amazing technology that my team is actually currently taking a look at that's going to help us evolve the way we think about engaging participants. They've got some really cool AI and ML techniques and models that we can leverage, but also just the strategy at large. So we haven't dove deeper into this, and maybe we can for a few minutes here, this idea of cloud native and what does that buy us? And more importantly, how does that benefit our clients and our participants? See, when you build something natively, let's step away from the cloud for a second. I'm going to use an analogy, still technology related, but one I think that's a little more ubiquitous that we can all understand. Let's talk about mobile. Everybody listening today likely has either an iPhone or a phone that's running an Android-based operating system. So iOS from Apple and Android from Google are the two dominant mobile platforms or operating systems. The cloud is just another version of a platform or an operating system. But coming back to mobile, you can build something to work natively on one of those platforms, or you can enable it to work on one of those platforms. And here's the difference. When you build it to work natively, Apple and Google are publishing a set of blueprints and guidelines for how you should build an application to be optimized in that environment that they've created. When you've enabled something to work in that environment, which I think many record keepers are doing, they're enabling their platforms to work in the cloud. There's a distinct difference. You're effectively retrofitting something. So in the case of mobile, you're taking a web application, you're putting it in a container, you're making it look like a mobile application, but it's not been optimized to run in that mobile environment. And here's why that matters. So as Apple and Google are creating new versions of their software, they're bringing new capabilities to market. Think Touch ID when it first became available, or Face ID. Something that's been built natively can take advantage of those new capabilities far more quickly than something that's been enabled to work in that environment. It's going to be more invasive. Again, it's a retrofit. So you've got to do more work and it takes more time, and there's more risk associated with taking advantage of those new capabilities. This cloud native record keeping platform is going to be very similar. So we have lots of fintechs and other providers that are, as I mentioned, by the day, reimagining certain micro parts of experiences. And they've been building those experiences to work in a cloud native environment. Well, when Vanguard has our fully cloud native record keeping platform, we can easily plug and play experiences that we're seeing that we believe could provide value to our clients and participants that we're not able or are not providing today very quickly. The other advantage it gives us is that AWS, our service provider, Amazon, they have a whole host of services that they're providing to their cloud clients. So we talked about AI and machine learning a lot today, and our aspiration to continue to personalize the experience and drive participants toward becoming better savers and making better decisions and putting them on a better path for retirement success. Amazon is one of the best companies in the world as it relates to understanding and leveraging data. Well, now what my team of data scientists can do is that they can get ready access to the ML models that Amazon is creating and making available to their cloud clients and easily pull them into our environments and tune them. But it just provides us with a level of speed and a level of flexibility to enhance the client and the participant experience that just doesn't really exist in record keeping today. And therein lies the reason why it's so important that this platform is going to be cloud native and why it makes for such a big distinction and we believe a really big competitive differentiator for Vanguard in the future.
And you and I could keep going for probably another hour just talking through a bunch of stuff. So I know there's a lot more here, but just to be courteous to your time and to kind of move us towards wrapping up, there were kind of two questions that I had as well that I'm just going to throw at you at the same time and let you pick away at it. This announcement with Infosys, I think, comes at kind of an interesting time in the market where, from a record keeping standpoint, there's been this concept of a race to zero cost. So I'd love to just kind of get your thoughts on that broader trend that's out there and kind of how this move, how you think about that as it relates to this partnership that you're creating with Infosys. And then the second big macro thing is from an ERISA litigation, 401k litigation, it seems like there's obviously a lot of lawsuits out there. Those lawsuits are evolving as plaintiffs' attorneys have more success. I think more lawsuits will come and more sort of pivots or changes in direction of those lawsuits are just kind of inevitable. So I guess when you think about that, love to hear about your thoughts on the race to zero and love to hear about how and if the current litigation environment played into any of these decisions that we've talked about today.
Let me take the second question first because it's a quick answer. The answer is no. I mean, we did not at all contemplate the litigation environment as we made this decision. So it wasn't even a part of the decision-making framework in any way as we decided to partner with Infosys. On your first question around the race to zero, again, I take it back to questioning the motivations of your provider and, how are they getting paid, right? At the end of the day, there has to be revenue coming from somewhere in order to pay for the services that are being provided. And, actually connecting the two, I think it potentially becomes dangerous to start to consider fees that are so low that you start to ask yourself, well, gosh, there has to be some other revenue source that's being used to subsidize the services for the plan. And, I'm not an ERISA expert, but, I know enough to know that that's starting to get into some dangerous territory. As an example, this idea that certain providers will use your decision as a plan sponsor to default your participants into advice as a reason to provide a lower record keeping fee, I would say, buyer beware. As I talked about before, to truly get the value from an advice service, you need someone that's engaged. And I think we can all agree that the vast majority of participants just allow inertia to take them forward. And that's why the target retirement funds and auto enrollment and auto escalation have been have had such a positive impact on this industry. When you start defaulting individuals into higher cost advice products that could be 40 basis points or more relative to a 5 to 10 basis point target retirement fund, target date fund, you've got to ask yourself why. Is the outcome going to be any different? Are they going to be able to get any differentiated value from that service if they're not engaging with it, if they're not providing information that allows the provider to further tailor the investment portfolio or change the financial planning recommendations that they may be giving to that participant? So, I step back and my colleagues step back, and we always implore the clients that we're working with, as well as clients that are considering Vanguard as their record keeper, to just understand the motivations of other providers. And, if you see a fee that seems too good to be true, chances are it probably is. And Rick, I know that you all in the consulting community at Lockton and elsewhere, I think have shared that same perspective with us, that in certain cases, you'll see a fee and you'll advise the client that is just, it's too low. There has to be, something going on. Either they're trying to buy business or they're using some other revenue in a model to compensate and subsidize for that low record keeping fee. So at some point, I do think, litigation is going to turn, its sight on those kinds of practices.
I really appreciate your insights on that and just everything else we've talked about today. There's a lot that I agree with, and there's a lot that I think makes a ton of sense. Not only just what you just said there, but also about kind of what you guys are doing and how you're approaching this new partnership. So, again, we could have kept going for a long time. I'm sure there's a bunch of stuff that I missed, but the nice thing is that hopefully, as you get a little farther down the road with this, would love to have an opportunity to check back with you and see how things have been going and how this new partnership, this brave new world that you're heading into, kind of how that's working out and where you see it going from there. So thanks for being here today.
We'd welcome that. It was a real pleasure, and thanks for having me. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Awesome. Right back at you. Enjoy the rest of your day, and thanks for being here.
Thanks, Rick. Have a great day.
And there you have it. Dean Edwards with Vanguard talking about their new partnership with Infosys. Honestly, I don't have a history of turning over the podcast to talk specifically about something that's going on at an individual service provider, or in this case, record keeper, like with Vanguard. But I thought, based on the magnitude of this announcement and the pervasiveness of Vanguard in the marketplace, I thought this might be a good opportunity to delve into that announcement in a lot more detail. If you loved it and want to hear more of that, let me know. If you didn't like it, happy to hear about that as well. Shoot me an email to feedback@401kfridays.com. Love to hear your input about this episode or just any other ideas for future guests, topic, content, or just ways to make the podcast more helpful and useful to you. As I mentioned in the intro, we do have some great episodes coming up talking about politics and 401k plans and what to expect in the upcoming election, the driving forces behind M&A activity in our retirement ecosystem, and best practices around fees and much more. So if you're not subscribed to the podcast, go ahead and take care of that today. Go to your favorite podcast app and search 401k Fridays and hit subscribe. If you don't want to go that path, you can always go to the website at 401kfridays.com/subscribe. And we have a bunch of little buttons you can click there that'll help you take care of it as well. That's it for today. Until next time, I hope you make your Friday a 401k Friday. And now for some disclosures. The content in this podcast is provided for educational and discussion purposes only. Investing involves risk, including a potential loss of investment. Lockton does not and cannot guarantee the future performance or specific level of performance, the success of any investment, or success of any strategy. Nothing contained herein may be construed as investment or legal advice.